hello, finally, hockey fans. Are you ready to brave the wild? With me, your buddy, Paladino Joey. Yup, I'm finally back. Brave the Wild is finally back. Episode number 21 of Brave the Wild. Today is Wednesday, August the 26th, 2009. It has been over 2 months since Brave the Wild had its most recent show. And today, well, we're catching up. It'll be part one of a two-part series of catching up. So episode number 22 will be catching up part two, basically. First and foremost, though, the schedule got in the way for Brave the Wild. And, of course, the other two shows got in the way with lots going on. I apologize. I was also trying to land Neil Nate Dog Thiesing. As you noticed, he will not be joining this episode, but he will very likely be joining episode number 2. I needed to at least get part of this up, and that way also the overall catching up won't be a big, long, hour-long show. This will be more split up, and things will be a little bit more feasible here. So again, Brave the Wild is available on thesportstuff.com and on iTunes. I thank each and every one of you for listening. I appreciate it very much. We would like you to sign up to the message boards on thesportstuff.com. On the right-hand corner of thesportstuff.com, there's a button that says TSS Boards. Simply click on that. That is how you can sign up to the message boards and interact with me and other members of the website. You can vote on polls, you can talk hockey, you can talk any sport you want on there. You can even talk video games or any other random items. So it's 100% free and 100% fun. Also, a couple other things to get to. You may notice that the sound quality, from my voice anyway, is significantly different, significantly better right now. That is because I invested into a new microphone, a more radio-friendly microphone for this show. So I hope you're enjoying the higher quality sound to make Brave the Wild better for you, the listener. More comfortable, a little less treble sound, I guess you could call it. So absolutely fantastic. So yeah, you get the idea. The next show we'll probably host Neil Nate Dog Thiesing, but I had to get something up here, and of course, because there's so much to catch up to, and regardless if Neil is able to join in part 2 or not, got to get tonight up and got to get some of this covered. You can't just let it get too stale before training camp starts. That would be kind of strange to be talking about the signing of Marian Havlet and all that good stuff. So one final item I'll get into later in the show. So with no further ado, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back right after this announcement.
Here on thesportstuff.com, get on board the Viking ship with Purple Mafia. We will talk about the new Purple People Eaters and the best running back in the NFL, Adrian Peterson. This team is ready to make a move forward. Purple Mafia is available on thesportstuff.com along with iTunes and MediaFly. Simply download and listen to the most honest and passionate Vikings coverage.
Here on thesportstuff.com, the new fast-breaking Wolves are bursting on the scene with Timberwolves Explosion. Hear about this exciting new era with Al Jefferson, Kevin Love, Johnny Flynn, and new coach Kurt Rambis. Check us out on thesportstuff.com and on iTunes, where we cover the Wolves like nobody else. Show your true blue, download and listen to this explosion of Timberwolves basketball. And we are back here on Brave the Wild, episode number 21. A reminder for iPod users, you will notice that the Timberwolves Explosion commercial is new, and the new microphone is integrated into that one. Expect new ads for Purple Mafia and Brave the Wild to have the microphone in the not-too-distant future. So that way we are upgrading the sound quality on everything related to the shows I do. Paladino Live Productions, you can call it. Oh, and, of course, always related to thesportstuff.com. Also, do check out minnesota.nhlfansite.com, minnesota.nhlfansite.com. Nice enough to put a link to Brave the Wild. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. And let's get started to catching up today. First and foremost, new coach Todd Richards. We already talked about that in episode number 20. Mike Ramsey will be kept on as an assistant, but Dave Barr replaces Mario Tremblay. So that's pretty much the way things go there. Dave Barr was long expected to be one of the assistants. Mike Ramsey was always a big question mark, and glad to have him back. So you have 2 Minnesotans on as your assistants. So that is definitely good. So that's taken care of for that bit of information. Well, there was an NHL draft. There was an NHL draft a while ago. And I'll be honest, I don't know many of the players. The first 2 picks, though, Nick Leddy and Matthew Hackett, well, there's a little bit of interest there, absolutely. Especially the first one is Nick Leddy, a stud from Eden Prairie, a stud defenseman with the Minnesota Wild hope can bring a nice power play quarterback in the years to come. And, of course, just an overall great defenseman as well. Nick Leddy, a player of the Wild really do like. They actually traded down. They did not take Jordan Schrader with that 12th pick. They traded down to 16 and got Nick Leddy. Jordan Schrader was there again, but Nick Leddy was the guy all along. So nice, savvy move by new general manager Chuck Fletcher. Absolutely cool. Adding more draft picks, a couple 4th rounds and 6th rounds. So gotta like that. Indeed, there. The Wild also acquired Kyle Brodziak from Edmonton for a 6th round and acquired a 4th round and acquired 4 4th and 5th rounders. So there goes a couple draft picks again. The Wild needed some depth at center and got him from Edmonton. Of course, Kyle Brodziak at the time was arbitration eligible, so he wasn't a member of the team just yet. We'll get further into him in a little bit here. Matthew Hackett is the nephew of former goaltender for the Chicago Blackhawks and others, Jeff Hackett. So there's a potential goalie of the future again there. Hopefully, the Wild hope he can be something later on as the years go by. That is the good part. So that pretty much concludes my draft coverage. I mean, I don't know a super duper amount about the guys afterwards. I'll just name their names at this point in time. Christopher Fulcalt, a left wing from Calgary. Falstrom and Falstrom from Minnesota, so that's good, right wing. Darcy Kempler, a goalie, another goalie. That one is from Red Deer. Jari Salonen, who can play either wing. He's from the Finnish juniors, Blues junior, so that's good. Eric Halla, also from Minnesota, St. Mary's High School in Minnesota. So Shattuck St. Mary's, 2 Minnesotans coming in there. And again, I'll admit, I'm really sorry. I don't know very much about them. I'm more of a pro hockey guy than a high school hockey guy. That's just how it's going to go, and I apologize. Anthony Hamburg, a center from the Dallas Midget Stars from Texas AAA, was the final pick for the Minnesota Wild. Those are both, Halla and Hamburg were both 7th round picks for the Minnesota Wild. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know everything about them. We'll just have to wait and see how things go. So before I get into the major free agent talk, well, first it'll be the small free agent, but also Jim Mill, is the new assistant general manager. There are at least one new assistant general manager, as the Wild hired 2 of them. Jim Mill will be ultimately will be the GM of the Houston Aeros, so that will be his main role. Brent Flahr later added to be the assistant GM of the Wild on the NHL side of things. And that meant Tom Lynn no longer assistant general manager for the Minnesota Wild. I believe I covered that in episode 20, and if not, well, he is no longer an assistant general manager for the Minnesota Wild. That was kind of a misunderstanding going on between Chuck Fletcher and Tom Lynn earlier on. Tom Lynn expected to be kept on, and he wasn't. So there you go. What was your favorite Dan Fritchie moment? Or Peter Olechi? Neither one of them will be returning for the Minnesota Wild, as they were not, their contracts were not tendered, and they are not going to be with the Minnesota Wild any longer. So with the boring free agency out of the way, at least with those two, that's kind of a boring free agent thing. Fritchie and Olechi, who neither one of them really all that great. Like Fritchie had a slight run going on. Olechi, well, never really much of anything, to be honest. He was very unproductive for the Wild, I thought, last year. So now we get into, you could say, the main topic of the show today. We're going to also get into it with Nate Dog Thiesing, if he's available in part 2, because you have more of an interaction with two people, but I'm going to get into it now as well. You just have to. I listened to episode number 1 of Brave the Wild, which, by the way, turned 1 year old on the 23rd of August this year. It is the 26th. It's the 26th only because it's about 12:30 in the morning right now. So I'm burning the midnight oil. It seems like Brave the Wild is the burning the midnight oil show for me. Seems to be this is the one I always do late at night for whatever reason. And on episode number 1, because I have to mention this, I talked about how Marian Gaborik will either sign or get traded. There's no way the Minnesota Wild let Marian Gaborik walk. There's just no way in hell. And of course, we learned otherwise around January last year when he was injured, and how the Minnesota Wild could never trade Marian Gaborik when they were sort of trying. They were too busy trying to sign him, and how they waited so long to even start talking to him. The Minnesota Wild hadn't even talked to Marian Gaborik a year ago at this point in time, late in the summer. And, just more and more reason why Doug Risebrough is no longer general manager of the Minnesota Wild. I ripped into him quite a bit on State of the Wild. That was episode 19. What more can I say, folks? What more can I say about general manager Doug Risebrough? There's no way in hell Marian Gaborik is just going to walk in free agency. He did walk in free agency. Yeah. And the best part of it is, now I know I didn't mention this either, Marian Gaborik. I just started to get into Twitter a teeny bit. I twittered Marian Gaborik, asked him how he was doing. Like mentioned Twitter, whatever. Asked him how he was doing, how was New York turning out. He was nice enough, and I hope this is the real Marian Gaborik, and I think it is. He twittered back to me, folks. Marian Gaborik twittered back to me. He said things are going good, looking at houses and stuff, and thank you for being so loyal to me all these years. So that was cool for Marian Gaborik to do that. That showed something. You saw other posts that he was bragging about he's driving a Ferrari and asking if fans are jealous or if people are jealous. Whatever, that's just typical celebrity on Twitter. That's just how they roll, basically. So I'm going to have a little bit softer spot for him just because I thought that was really neat of him to Twitter me back. But overall, the New York Rangers are perfect for Marian Gaborik. And you can guess why. What have the New York Rangers done the last 15 years or so? They've signed big-name free agents and accomplished very little, for the most part. Signed the Eric Lindrosses, signed the Jaromir Jagrs, and so many others. Just countless others. Big-name guys who are a little bit older. Gaborik, luckily, isn't that old for his sake, but always that more high-maintenance superstar type of team that doesn't really accomplish much. They just spend and spend and spend. Luckily, with the salary cap now, they might not be able to just sign whoever quite as easily. But they did take Marian Gaborik. And the other funny part is how Gabby did put in 5 goals against the New York Rangers. He did have that psychotically amazing game about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. That was just so fun. So fun. I wish he was, I personally wish we could have kept Marian Gaborik. Because, as I said in episode 1, Marian Gaborik is elect man. As the ending song on Brave the Wild is a remix for Elect Man, a character in Mega Man 1. And how the Minnesota Wild do play in the XL Energy Center, and that, of course, is the major electricity company in this town, and in several other towns in the United States, that Gabby's Elect Man. He just is, because he electrifies the crowd, and every time he touches the puck, everybody's got to say, "Uh-oh, let's keep an eye on Marian Gaborik here. He could put one in easily. He could just explode on a break and put it in." The Wild will not have that kind of player next year. As I now slide into the Marian Gaborik's replacement, who luckily we got a matter of hours later on July 1st, Martin Havlet, former Chicago Blackhawk. Martin Havlet is the new Minnesota Wild I guess, franchise player. Now, he's going to have to wear the number 14 instead of the number 24. Havlet was, of course, 24 with the Chicago Blackhawks, who played pretty darn good in the postseason last year, by the way, the Chicago Blackhawks. Derek Bugard said he's going to have to basically fight me for the number. So Havlet is wearing number 14. End of conversation, right? End of conversation for that. Havlet was also a first-round pick a year before Marian Gaborik. They are both from Czechoslovakia. And Havlet went in the first round 26th overall by the Ottawa Senators in 1999. So that's the deal there. But as you look at Martin Havlet's career numbers, well, he's also had injury history the last 4 years, especially. He's never played 80 games until last season. He played 73 games back in 2001. Both Gaborik and Havlet actually having fairly similar numbers, actually, when you think about it in that first year. 42 points for Havlet. I remember Gaborik had about 36, if my memory serves correctly. And yeah, my memory serves correctly. So he spent his first 5 years with the Ottawa Senators. Didn't have major injuries, but missed about 12 games a year or so. 42 points his rookie year, 50 points his second year, 59 third year, 68 his fourth year. So you're seeing a steady uptrend. That's very good. But then major injury issues in his fifth year. Only played 18 games. Did amass 16 points in those 18 games, so was productive in that limited time on ice. As I try not to cough, it seems like I'm always coughing. It's ridiculous. Then eventually wound up with the Chicago Blackhawks. Only played 56 games, but did get 57 points. So it's just nonstop injuries. The next year, with the Blackhawks again, only 35 games, 27 points. It's like, do you see a trend here? Kind of like Gaborik. Same type of injury issues as Gaborik. Until last season, when Martin Havlet played 81 games, had 29 goals, 48 assists, good for 77 points. His career high in goals is 31. Marian Gaborik's is 42. That's something also you got to look at, folks. Martin Havlet will not bring the explosiveness that Marian Gaborik did. But the biggest key, the biggest upgrade when you have from Gaborik to Havlet is the attitude. We don't really know how long Marian Gaborik really even wanted to be here, or how much he really wanted to be here. He had never been an unrestricted free agent until this year, because in hockey you have to be a certain age, you have to be in the league a certain amount of time to be an unrestricted free agent. You had all that holdout deal after that great playoff run. Gaborik holds out. That was bullcrap. That was absolute bullcrap. Havlet chose to come to the Minnesota Wild. Now, only a select number of teams had salary cap space, but he chose to come here against other, fairly solid teams that were after him. So I'm very positive on that angle. But a relatively similar injury history is a little bit frustrating, and the fact he's not as explosive is also frustrating. Though the Wild, Martin Havlet, not as expensive as Marian Gaborik. They save about $1.5 million a year, Havlet versus Gaborik. Gaborik signed for 7.5 a year, Havlet about 6.5. So that's the good part there. A little bit smarter spending. And, of course, as I said, about 4 or 5 times Havlet chose to come to the Minnesota Wild. So very exciting there. Chicago Blackhawks, by the way, made Havlet expendable when Marian Hossa signed a 10-year deal with the Chicago Blackhawks. Why they would sign Hossa to a 10-year deal when he's about 30 years old, I'm not sure. One of the mysteries of the universe. Yes, the Blackhawks made it to the conference finals last year, but 10-year deal with a guy who's either right around 30 years old. You're gonna have to come back to me on that one. I'm not really sure I understand the logic there with that. Okay, whatever, whatever. I'm going to briefly get into this next topic. Probably get a little deeper into it in part 2. the Minnesota Wild are pursuing Alex Tenge, who is a former Colorado Avalanche. Alex Tenge has had a pretty darn good career overall. Again, he's had an 81-point year and a 78-point year. That was about 3 or 4 years ago there. 79-point year before that. I mean, he's had a very productive career in the NHL. Alex Tenge, a lot of Wild fans will remember him from the, all those great games against the Colorado Avalanche in the postseason and also, just in the regular season in general. He was a 12th overall pick by the Avalanche in 98, Played 3 years ago in Calgary, 2 years ago in Calgary, and 50 games for the Montreal Canadiens last year, amassing 41 points. Didn't even realize Alex Tenge was still available. A lot of us just like, okay, what the heck happened there? Still available, and his agent reporting that Alex Tenge very much on the Minnesota Wild, or the Minnesota Wild are very much on the agent and Tenge's radar. So that is a very exciting thought there. Minnesota Wild need an Alex Tenge. There's also talk, though, because of the salary cap situation, the Wild would then have to trade somebody to make room for Tenge. So we'll just have to wait and see how things go there. I'd love to see Kim Janssen be the guy leaving at this point in time. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll end up being Bouchard. Who knows? Tenge, he's going to be a more productive player for the Wild than Bouchard, in my opinion. I like Bouchard a lot, but Tenge, I think, is a better fit overall in general. We'll just have to wait and see how things go there, though. But the guy clearly legit. One thing, though, never has been a 30-goal scorer. He's kind of like another Havlet, really. A guy who'll get about 25 to 29 goals, maybe to about right around 30, but he'll get a lot of assists. He'll get about 50 assists, so that's good. 40, 50 assists a year. Good stuff there. Wouldn't be bad having a Tenge, Havlet, Tenge and left wing, Havlet right wing, and Koivu as your top line. That would be pretty exciting. Speaking of Koivus, we'll get into that little drama here real quick. We'll probably talk a little more about that in part 2 again. There'll be a little interaction with some of the similar stuff with Neil. Other things I won't even get into with Neil. Mikko Koivu took us on a drama ride, very Brett Favre-like. Unfortunately, the ending, not quite as happy. As Saku Koivu put us through about 2 weeks, he was just about to sign with the Wild, and then it's just, okay, we're still waiting on this one. And never did sign with the Wild, wound up with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks about 2 weeks after he was, expected to sign somewhere, and preferably here. It looked like we were the winners in that category. Never happened. Talked about basically the comfort level playing with his brother, both of them being captains of their teams for multiple years, basically. Mikko Koivu and, of course, Saku Koivu. It'd be kind of an uncomfortable situation being Saku was 8 years older and might have to be alternate captain instead of top captain with the Wild. A lot of people think that's silly and a lot of BS. Being the number 2 center for the Wild could have been really interesting. So Saku Koivu not with the Wild. He goes to one of our arch rivals and most hated teams in the NHL, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. That sucks very much. But the good part was it was a one-year deal. Teemu Selanne's final season with the Anaheim Ducks. He is playing his final season in the NHL, so maybe they're going to try to make a run there, those two together. So that's the end of that, basically. One other quick note before I get into the final thing to talk about today. The Wild do add Wade Dublowitz, who is a former Denver Pioneer, and yes, I do watch WCHA hockey. He was on the Denver Pioneers, and an outstanding college goalie at the time. That was the year that I remember him mostly was when the Minnesota Gophers went on to win the national championship in 2002. Wade Dublowitz stood in the way of the Wild winning the WCHA tournament that year. And interestingly enough, though, he didn't really emerge until late in his college career, so Mr. Dublowitz was never drafted in the NHL. He's had a fairly quiet career, unfortunately, for his sake. Nothing really much overall. But in the limited playing time, he's been all right, to be honest. in 40 NHL games overall, 29 of them starts. Dublowitz is 17 and 15 with a goals against average of 2.64. Not bad. No shutouts, though, but a save percentage of 91.6. So the numbers are there. That's the good part. Overall, the wins and losses aren't really there, and he kind of struggled a little in his limited time with the very limited time with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But he did do fairly well with the New York Islanders about 2 years ago, 07-08 year. 20 games overall, 17 games started, 9-9 with a pretty bad team and a 2.7 goals against average and a save percentage about 92%. So, he's all right. He's about 30 years old. He'll be a steady veteran possibility. He's like a third goalie potentially. Josh Harding was inked to a 1-year deal, and there's still a strong possibility he will be traded. So Dublowitz, basically, he is insurance. Mr. Dublowitz is insurance in case the Wild are to trade Josh Harding. No, not really likely to become a starting goalie for the Minnesota Wild. Neither one of them, of course. Harding would probably like to be traded and have a shot at a number one job in another team in the National Hockey League. So that is how things are going to stand there. Kyle Brodziak, I'm not going to get into him with Neil Thiesing, so I'll get into him now. Not all that exciting. Luckily, though, he has some time to improve. That's the good part. Interestingly, he was born in St. Paul, Alberta. Not St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul, Alberta. So, interesting. Same province, of course, as Calgary, Alberta. Oh, goody. He was a 7th-round pick by the Edmonton Oilers in 2003. Just, he's an okay, solid player. You know, he's only played 3 years in the NHL. Only 6 games and got 1 goal 3 years ago. 2 years ago, played 80 games, 14 goals, 17 assists, good for 31 points. And last year in 79 games, had 11 goals, 16 assists, good for 27 points. Mostly just a depth type of move. Nothing really exciting there. No reason to really get any further into him other than he's known to be a solid face-off guy. That's the good part. As remember last year, almost every show, I talked about how the Wild got beat in the face-off category. Once in a blue moon, we would win in the face-off category, but not much. So, to me, he's just another Mark Schwinnar, Oh, goody. Remember Mark Schwinnar? Didn't really excite anybody in this town, and I don't expect anything different from this guy. I just don't. Lottie freaking da. So, that's the end of that talk. We're going to close today with the Minnesota Wild. Now, I didn't even know they were going to have a third jersey until about a week ago when I found it, that information when I was digging around for stuff to talk about here on this show. Because I want to talk about stuff other than just the players, in anything, anything of interest. The Wild will be unveiling a third jersey on the 30th of August at the State Fair. That is, of course, this Sunday. But Aesthetics.info leaked the third jersey. And as expected, now I personally expected this all along because common sense really comes into this. I'm not smart. It's common sense. I mean, sure, I'm hopefully somewhat smart, but it's not why I figured this out. Thought the jersey would be green. They got rid of the green jersey, the original green jersey for whatever stupid reason. To date, I don't know why they did. It actually was pretty cool with a nice Wild logo, the classic bear or fox or badger, whatever it is. It could be any of them, as they like to say. Logo right on the chest. Circle logos on the shoulders and blah, blah, blah. You know what it looked like. They got rid of it already, so unfortunately it's a collector's item in the closet right now, that particular one. And they replaced it with, that classic forest green. It just says Minnesota. It kind of looks like Twins almost, like the Twins logo when it was in cursive, except a little bit thinner font, not as bold. It says Minnesota kind of with an angle, the M at the bottom and kind of angling upward. I'm looking at it right now. Brett Burns, as they called him in the Star Tribune. Too much Brett Favre mania. I think they got Brett Favre on the brain in this town beyond belief. Brett Burns. Why don't they make him number 4 too while they're at it? I mean, come on now. I love Brett Favre too, and I'm pumped, but sheesh, you guys are stupid. No, okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, it says Minnesota in cursive, as I mentioned. The A does the line underneath the word Minnesota, just how Twins jerseys do that. And it says Wild in that line in red. It's just kind of a small little print in red. It angles from the right up to the left. So that's basically how that whole jersey looks. Pretty plain looking, to be honest with you. They also kept the laces, how there are laces up in the top of the vest area on the red jerseys. I have that on our green jerseys as well. So there's going to be laces on both of the home jerseys for the Minnesota Wild now. So now that we have two home jerseys again, there is a white bar, a big white bar, and a thin white bar in between the green again on the edges of the jersey, or at least the bottom of the jersey and then the elbow areas, which is kind of typical for hockey. You're going to get bars around those areas. It's not necessarily white, it's actually wheat. It's kind of that wheat color. How the Wild have wheat, gold, white, red, and green. Not to confuse you too much, but yeah, it is more of the wheat color. It's not really white, it's wheat. And there's also a line up in the top area, the shoulder area, a line going around both shoulders. And of course the numbers are in the shoulder area and the back. It's nothing very exciting to me. It's kind of plain looking. But I'm glad that the Minnesota Wild do have green back with their jerseys. I mean, it's the main color for the Minnesota Wild to me is green. It's not red, it's green. So, and Minnesota NHL hockey has always been green with the Minnesota North Stars until they got those infamous black jerseys that eventually we found out were a secret shadow plan to turn them into the Dallas Stars by the evil Norm Greed. So, it's nice to have green back. Green jerseys back, not Norm Green back. But it's not that exciting. So some of you out there that are wondering what it may look like, it's not all that exciting. And we'll get into it a little more with Neil. We'll hear his opinion. You're hearing mine right now. Mine will be just brief, like basically what I said, except much briefer on part 2. We'll hear Neil's thoughts on it if and when I can have him on. So, and if I can't, I can't. So we're going to conclude the show at this point in time with the unveiling of the third jersey. I'm going to put a poll up after the second show about the Wild jersey. I don't really want to do that tonight, so we'll ask about how you feel about it. So do look for the poll on there in the not-too-distant future. But before I go, I would like to encourage you to call into our phone lines. I have never been able to mention phone lines here on Brave the Wild in the past, but we have them now on thesportstuff.com. The number is 209-736-7877, 209-736-7877. And, of course, the 7877 spells out, or at least the 877 spells out TSS. So do call that number. It is a voicemail. Treat it as such. Mention you were calling in for Brave the Wild. State your comment, question, shout out, whatever it is. Keep it about a minute long. And it'll be played on air, and you'll be a part of things on air. You'll be talking to me. It'll be terrific. And, I'll leave my opinion and response to that on air as is. Also, do leave me an email, palladinolive@yahoo.com, palladinolive@yahoo.com. Also, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/palladinolive, twitter.com/palladinolive. Like to hear from you whenever you like. Do follow my Twitter. It'd be nice. You don't have to, but it'd be great. So with no further ado, we're going to call it a night. I better get to bed, and we'll have part 2 up in the next week or so. Take care, Wild fans.